What started as a Saturday morning coffee date turned into a podcast where we chat about things like faith, family, finances, and so much more.
In a world that is encouraging you to live your truth and to follow your heart, we want to encourage you to live devoted to the truth.
The Bible has a lot to say about how to live a victorious Christian life, and we want to share practical insight in how to apply those truths to your life as we endeavor to apply them to our own lives as well.
If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and share these episodes with your friends so that you can help them live this devoted life too. Welcome to another episode of This Devoted Life podcast. We are excited to be here again with you today, and we are going to be talking about stewardship within the home and also as far as family finances go. We're going to talk about that a little bit. James is a business owner and a businessman, and he has been wonderful in leading our family both spiritually and financially. And so he's going to give just a little bit of insight into family finances a little bit later in the episode. But to start us off, I wanted to talk about a book. It's called Keep a Quiet Heart by Elisabeth Elliot. I read this several years ago, and there was a quote in here that really has stuck with me. I mean, I think we hadn't even had our third child yet. So It's been over 5 years since reading this. And this is something that I use regularly with myself and in just things that I have shared with other people.
It's kind of nice. You can judge when things happen by how old your children are.
Well, I remembered what house we were living in and what was going on. And what's even more interesting in this is this was actually around the time that I had our miscarriage. And so it was a very poignant time in my life. And this quote, it's the book is by Elisabeth Elliot, which you've probably heard of Jim Elliot. He was a missionary to Ecuador, and he was murdered by the Auca Indians. He had a heart for that people group and wanted to reach them. And if you don't know their story at all, it's definitely worth.
Yeah, it's very moving. Yeah, very
worth
powerful.
Learning about.
Yeah.
But Elisabeth Elliot ended up taking their daughter Valerie back to the Auca Indians and was able to win many of them to the Lord after her husband's death. So
That's awesome.
It's a beautiful story. But Elisabeth Elliot has so many just pearls of wisdom. And Keep a Quiet Heart is a collection of emails that she sent her email subscribers over the years. But in one of her emails, she had a quote by a woman named Janet Erskine Stewart. And it says this: "She delighted in seeing her plan upset by unexpected events, saying that it gave her great comfort and that she looked on such things as an assurance that God was watching over her stewardship, was securing the accomplishment of his will, and working out his own design." Mm-hmm. And when I read that, I went, wow, okay, so as a mom, I am interrupted constantly.
Yeah.
You and I will be having a conversation and someone comes up needing something.
Yeah, it's incessant.
Completely incessant.
Mm-hmm.
There's a joke. I'm sure that every parent understands. As soon as you get on the phone to make a phone call, all of a sudden the house is on fire, the world is falling apart, and all the things, And so our days are constantly being interrupted, and some of them seem so silly, like a child can't find a missing shoe or whatever. But all of these interruptions can be really discouraging because it feels like you're not accomplishing anything because it's constantly being interrupted, And so when I read that quote, it really gave me just a peace about those interruptions. Yep. She was glad that her day was interrupted because that meant that God had his hand in her day and was bringing interruptions into her life so that she could use those interruptions as a blessing.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I just thought that totally changes it. Okay, that flat tire that you got on your way to work, maybe someone stopped to help you and you were able to talk to them and invite them to church, or maybe you missed an accident further down the road or whatever. You hear stories about that kind of stuff all the time.
For sure.
And within the home, as parents, all those interruptions from our children are opportunities to reach the heart of our child.
Yeah.
And when you are finding that missing shoe, you are able to show your child that they matter, or you can exemplify patience if you're doing it well, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is pretty humbling because
It
I
is.
guarantee you, when I'm looking for that shoe, that's not the first thing I'm thinking
No,
about.
it's not me either. But that's
Right?
why I think this quote
It
stuck
is.
with me
Yeah,
so much, is because it's not something that was coming naturally.
for sure.
But when I am reminded of that, I'm able to change my perspective on things. And
Yeah.
I definitely do not think of that every time I'm looking for that missing
Yeah. No,
shoe.
it's
Sometimes
a
I'm
great.
grumbling and complaining, which I shouldn't be,
Yeah.
but it's a good reminder of how I should view that
For sure.
situation.
Yeah. And again, it gives you maybe a different perspective
Mhm.
and a mindset that you didn't have already.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, God was watching over her stewardship. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's so good, because he has given us things to steward.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about the wise and the foolish stewards,
Hmm.
and he has given us things. So whatever you have been given, whether it's children, a home, a job, whatever he's given you,
Yep.
how you steward it matters for his glory.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times when we may hear a sermon on stewardship, things like that, we automatically think of money, finances, things like that. But I mean, time is our most valuable resource,
Oh,
right?
of course.
So we need to be wise stewards of our time, redeeming the time because the days are evil. I think I mentioned that on a previous episode recently. But also, with your children, you need to be wise stewards of their time and their heart and just their childhood and influence them for Christ.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
So I think we're going to move into another type of stewardship, which is our finances. And we're going to talk a little bit about family finances. And I actually have no idea what James is going to talk about. So this is something that he has been brainstorming. I am going to get to glean from him right now. And hopefully I'll ask some good clarifying questions.
Wow, that's very trusting of you.
Well, you've done a good job leading me and teaching me so far.
All right,
So
well, thanks. Yeah. So this is more you at the beginning of a year, you hear a lot of, 2024, get your finances right in 2024 or build wealth in 2024 or whatever. And I know we're, almost halfway through first quarter already. So
mhm.
this is definitely not supposed to be a, build wealth in 2024 type podcast or topic. But I just, I listened to a few podcasts recently, kind of those, podcast and YouTube videos about financial things. And again, I'm not saying I'm above them all or that I have it all figured out or anything, but I do lead a fairly large company, 9-figure business. And when I say lead, I'm one of 2 or 3 of us that do. But so I am in the world of business
Mhm.
and finances and things like that every day, operations. And I just think there's so many just simple truths that we can basically imply, integrate, apply to our families that set us up for success.
Mhm.
And that's not just success for our retirement or our future, but success for tomorrow
Mhm.
and living our lives to the fullest potential, whether it's financially, spiritually, physically, all of those things. But in particular, there's Dave Ramsey kind of mindset and all of the baby steps. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Money Guy and Brian and Bo. They've kind of come on the scene over the past couple of years. I listen to them. I also have a very aggressive mindset and aggressive business kind of approach that are totally opposite of Dave Ramsey and all of his baby steps.
Not overly cutthroat or anything like that. Just,
No,
just
yeah.
like you said, aggressive is probably the good word, but I
Yeah,
don't want it to
yep.
come across like
Yeah,
you're
no,
like a
we're going to the
cutthroat.
moon. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're we're gonna blow the lid off of this thing. So, so I have this blend of a lot of
Mhm.
different mindsets, and I love to listen to them all and think about them all. So, if you're really into Dave Ramsey, a few of these things, will probably resonate with you a little more. If you're really into some of the more aggressive mindsets, you might have a different take on it. And again, these all are fairly surface level things, but I think they're good reminders and maybe just an opportunity for us to get on the same page. I don't know who you are specifically and what type of financial acumen you have or don't have. There might be people listening to this right now that are centimillionaires, decamillionaires, multimillionaires, 100,000aires. I don't know. You might have a negative net worth right now, and you are building and working out of it, and that's totally fine. We're all at different parts of our journey right now. Again, just in life, I don't want to just keep repeating the financial, the physical, the spiritual, over and over. But we're at different points in our lives. And so these particular things are more about family finances and specifically as a spouse. So, husband and wife, how you can approach your finances. So again, step number one, and this is very, 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 very basic, but I do think has to be said, is you have to get on the same page as your spouse. If you have a different mindset about money than your spouse has, it has to be made a priority to get on the same page. And if you've worked for years to get on the same page as your spouse, try something different, or at least both of you write down some financial goals, some approaches, some things that you want to do and can do literally today. Like I'm saying, pause the podcast, stop what you're doing, call up your spouse or go call them from the other room and start working on getting on the same page. Because if you don't get on the same page, it is a recipe for frustration, for bitterness, for just not meeting and reaching your goals. Just so many different things that it's just really important to get on the same page. And you and I, we had a lot of these conversations when we were dating, and then definitely when we were engaged, and we have them. I mean, I kind of feel bad for you because you have to listen to these things like all the time, different goals and desires and aspirations that I have. And we're a great team.
We are.
Again, I am the breadwinner per se in the home, but I mean, without you and all of the context and perspective that you bring, not to mention, all of the, things you do every day with, our children and our home and all of that, it's just, and again, I'm open to your perspective and your comments on this, because I just feel like us being on the same page financially really makes a big difference in our marriage.
Yeah, I think a lot of it actually boils down to trust. So
Ooh,
as the breadwinner of our home, I trust you and you trust my feedback.
Yep.
And so anything that you do financially for our family is something that we have discussed in advance. When you got into real estate investing, there were several things that you were ready to just jump headlong into. And I was like, I'm not quite ready to do that yet. And you graciously waited.
Sure.
And then when I was ready, after we discussed it more, I learned more about it, then I was able to jump in it with you.
Yes.
And it wasn't something that you were just like, we're doing this, I don't care what you say. It was, let's talk about this. This is what I'm feeling God's leading us to do. Do you trust me? You know, and it just was, yes, I trust you. And I've laughed because you are a workhorse, right? Like you are ready to plow ahead and just to go all in on so many things. And I've joked, and this is said very lovingly. Like I've told him before, I was like, you're like this workhorse and I am sitting in the wagon and I've got the reins. And sometimes I'm pulling back going, whoa, buddy, like not quite yet, but that's how a good team driver actually is with horses. They know how to give the horse a little bit of head so that they can move forward and plow and to work together with the person who's driving them.
Sure.
And I'm not saying I'm driving you because that is so far from the truth, but I feel like that kind of is how we are as a team. Like you are the one who's working so hard towards these financial goals, but you are discussing all of them with me,
Yes.
and I'm along for the ride, I guess,
Yep. And I'll also, say that I have really appreciated it throughout the years where you also do just kind of let me go
Mhm.
and trust me,
Mhm.
and you hitch your wagon to me for a reason, right? And it's freeing because I think if you really scrutinized every little
Mhm.
thing, it might get a little exhausting unless we scrutinized it together and then made the decision to move forward.
Mhm.
But you don't know how perfect your little interjection and comment was because that was actually the third bullet point here in the notes was build trust through communication.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, so you kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but I love it. And that communication, like I said, stop what you're doing right now, go get your spouse. That is how you start communication and
Mhm.
or continue communication. And that trust, it it makes such a huge difference because if and it's not like a distrust where you think like, well, your partner's embezzling from you,
Mhm.
or it's not even that amount of distrust, but it's just like, what is the motive here, or like, why are they just squeezing the financial life out of me? Like, I want to
Mhm.
go do this and they want to do that, and now you're working against each other, and it's like almost a competition, or it's
It's a lack of synergy.
yeah, or a weight weighing you down. But building that trust, building that communication
Mhm.
is a big thing.
Yeah, I wanted to say real quick and interject this, as you were talking about the trust, I feel like for women, so often we try to take control of a lot of the situations within our home, not just finances, but in all areas. Sometimes as women, we can complain that our husbands aren't leading our home, but have we given him the trust to lead our
Yes.
home? And so I think that there has to be a little bit of this balance to where you are going to do things differently than I probably would do
Yep.
them. But that doesn't make them wrong.
Yes.
The way you lead family devotions is different than how I lead
Sure.
devotions with our
Yeah.
children in
Very
the
true.
morning. The way you're leading them is not wrong.
Yep.
And so I have to trust that what you are bringing to the table is with our best interest in mind, is something that you have prayerfully considered,
Yep.
is something that you feel God is leading us to do. And I have to just trust
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, actually, you just mentioned prayer. That's a lot of times what we'll do is, whether it's a big decision or a little decision, if we come to each other with an idea or whatever, you will ask each other, well, have you prayed about it?
Mhm.
And honestly, being totally transparent, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I didn't, I haven't even prayed about this yet,
Right.
and then we'll, kind of hit pause, pray about it for, whether it's days, weeks, months, whatever. And then, then the Lord really leads, but, prayerfully consider things.
Mhm.
That's a good one. Um, One thing, so I mentioned build trust through communication was the third bullet point. But honestly, the second bullet point was related to combined finances. But I think
Okay.
honestly, the way that it kind of evolved in this conversation is perfect. So, building that trust
Mhm.
is and getting on the same page with your spouse is a lot of times includes having combined finances. And when I say combined finances, that does not necessarily mean always just having one account and both being on that account. And the reason why I say that, and I'm not going to get into it all, but with estate planning or small business or large business or asset protection, all of those things. I mean, you might want a lot of different accounts. Not you don't necessarily need offshore accounts that you're siphoning money off into, tax for tax sheltering, things like that. But just all these phrases I'm using, you can tell like I get kind of inundated with a lot of different things. But the point here is, like I said, you might need 5, 10, 15 different accounts, but having combined finances, what that means to me is that it's not necessarily your money and my money, it's our money.
Right.
And we are a team.
Mhm.
So again, if I'm kind of the breadwinner and my wages and that's our wages.
Mhm.
Those are finances that help our family run.
Mhm.
And again, maybe you have different budget setups where every month you get X to spend, on your own without any, it doesn't even matter. Like you don't even have to like call me, question anything. I
Mhm.
get to spend some money that you don't, I don't have to call you and talk it through with you.
Mhm.
But just again, it's that communication,
Mhm.
that trust. However you do that, I think that having combined finances is
Mhm.
important.
We just were
Yeah.
having that conversation with our son because he was like, "Well, it's all daddy's money," And I was like, "Actually, it's not. It's our money." And he's like, "Well,
hmm
daddy makes all the money." And I said, "You're right, but we are a team.
hmm
I'm at home and I am taking care of the home front. I am cleaning the house and preparing all of the meals and
Yep.
doing all of this. Like, this is my role within our team. And daddy just happens to be the one who's bringing in the money for
Sure.
our team,
Yep.
and I think that that's important to teach our children is that a husband and wife, like when we get married, we become one flesh.
Yes.
And so what yours is mine and what's mine is yours.
hmm
It's a very old saying, but
Yeah.
it's true.
Yes.
When we become one flesh, we might be responsible for different roles
Yep.
within our team, but we're still a team.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. So the next thing is to create a common goal. Again,
Mhm.
all of these are very basic. But if you notice, these aren't. I'm not talking about just creating a budget and those little things. It's a little more of the psychology behind getting on this, having good family
Mhm.
finances, and because I don't think that you can dial in on all the mechanics of it until you have a good psychology behind it and a
Mhm.
good approach and plan. So, like I said, the next thing here is to create a common goal. And I could go 1,000 different directions with this. Obviously, if you don't have a goal, you can just waste your money and all these things. But one of the most valuable pieces so if you are, no, let me finish that sentence. One of the most valued pieces of having a common goal can help you withstand temptation. So, for example, if maybe you haven't been as good with or as intentional with your family finances as you should have been in the past. And, let's say as a man, you have a hobby or hobbies that you probably spend a lot more money than you realize or you
Mhm.
think you do. And you're just like, oh my goodness, now we're going to have this, like my wife's been really harping on me about our family finances. And now I can't even go out and, like do this hobby, whatever. It's like
That's where that
having,
bitterness comes in that you
yeah,
were
yeah,
talking
that
about.
jealousy and bitterness, and that might have been a different episode. I don't
You were
know,
talking about
but
bitterness earlier. Maybe it was the
no.
previous episode.
So but I guess again, the punchline here is you now have a very specific purpose and reason to make a change and it almost gives you an excuse. So
Mhm.
next time you're at your buddy calls you up or shoots you a text and says, hey, we're, going golfing, this weekend, blah, blah, blah. And, maybe this weekend you don't go golfing, but you say, we have this goal of saving some money to do this. And, even though they're going to jab you and they're going to, make it kind of throw you under the bus a little bit, at least you have a goal. You're on the same page as your spouse. And all of a sudden, they start realizing once you start accomplishing your goals and, getting that financial security, and abundance or whatever your goals are, they're like, well, maybe that golf wasn't that important,
Mhm.
or maybe I should cut back a little bit. And again, it's not saying that you can't go have fun ever.
Mhm.
It's just you have fun within the parameters of also achieving your financial
Right. I mean,
goals.
friends are important, but being on the same page as your spouse is
Mhm.
far more important than getting to go
Yeah.
out and golf with your
Yeah,
buddies.
I can, again, my mind goes 1,000 directions on all of this. So I'll leave it at that. But those are things that are important, I think, in being financially successful. Wealth can't wait. There's a book, that I think it's David Osborne, or one of those guys that I read several years ago. And having wealth and being financially secure, it's not a selfish thing, and it's not an ugly thing, and it's not a bad thing at all. It's actually sometimes your duty as a Christian, even, to be able to be financially stable enough to help yourself, help your family, and help others around you. And you can be more generous when you are more financially stable, things like that. So again, I won't go farther down that road, but another reason to have financial stability is weathering those financial storms, and be prepared to weather that storm. And again, I'll bring in the mental side of things. So if you have a rainy day fund, those emergency funds that, again, the Ramseys, all of the different financial people will tell you to have, that's, one of the baby steps is, they're important to physically get through that. If the car breaks down and you can't fix it, and you can't go to work, and you can't go to whatever, it like that compounds and unravels fast, right? But also having that peace, that mental peace, where it's like, if something comes along, like, I don't have to worry about it. We've got that covered, and it helps you get clarity on maybe something else that you eliminate distractions and eliminate those risks of those storms that come along.
Yeah, we talk a lot about parenting on this podcast, and I just can think about all of the times that I have something that I'm worrying about over here, and whether it's financial or not, if that worry bleeds into how I am responding to my children, how I'm responding to you as my spouse. So being able to, be financially set and to be wise stewards of our money takes away this worry and allows me to now focus on other things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful, and I think we're already coming up on half an hour on this episode, and I'm only halfway through my list here, so I'll keep things moving. But it's so energizing and motivating to me to talk about these things. And if you have something that I'm kind of just really glossing over because I would just want to kind of hit the high level things, please reach out, send us a note. Podcast at thisdevotedlife.com.
If you can't tell, he's very passionate about this
Yeah,
stuff.
and again, I'm not saying I have it all figured out, but we have had some levels of success in this area, and I just want to share that. I don't want this to be a burden on you. I want it to be energizing and motivating, and I just think it's important. So again, I'll leave that one. Another thing is to be content. Contentment, the Bible says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. And so it's together. It's godliness and contentment. And if we are always trying to keep up with the Joneses, and we know some Joneses, and I'm not talking about you Joneses, I'm talking about, just the saying. So like if we're always trying to keep up with people, or see something on Instagram, or see something, hear something that your friend is doing, it's like, man, how do they do that? Why, and then you start criticizing. You're like, yeah, they probably don't have anything in their retirement account, or I don't know what you're thinking, but if you're not content, then none of this matters. You need to work on that, but if you do have some financial security and you do create common goals and you are on the same page as your spouse, like that also helps with contentment as well, right? Because then
contentment within your marriage, contentment within your home.
Yes. Yeah. And I know we've said this before on other episodes, but the grass is always greenest where you water it. It's not necessarily green, on the other side of the fence. We know that, statistics show that, everything shows that, we, sticking with what you have and working on your marriage and working on your career and working on your children or in your children's lives and all of that. It's the best place to spend your time and energy. So godliness with contentment is great gain. Be content. Don't think you have to spend money to buy these things that are just going to make you feel more empty. Just be content with what you have, but also be motivated to then move on to the next step. Also be motivated by creating value. So things that, again, I look at it the difference between spending and investing. So something, when you spend too much, it can be very fleeting and very frivolous. But if you invest, then you are investing in your future. And I don't necessarily, I'll kind of skip a little bit down here, but it's part of living within your means. And I specifically use the word within your means because I know a lot of people, they'll talk about, I think it's obvious and we should all, I think, be on the same page that you shouldn't live above your means. Living paycheck to paycheck doesn't help anybody. And if you have to for, a little season of your life, obviously, though everyone has a different situation. Like I said, at the beginning of this conversation, you're at different points in your journey. But in general, the mindset should be to live within your means. But I will also take it a step further. I've heard a lot of people say to live below your means. And that, again, within a season of your life, you might do that just to get ahead faster. But for decades, I don't think it's healthy to live for decades way below your means because, your retirement might appreciate faster, your retirement account or whatever investment asset that you are working towards, might appreciate faster that way. But it also might bring in other issues and concerns and waste your youth. So I don't think you want to waste your youth.
No, and I mean, we can't take anything with us anyway. So we're not saying go and spend it on frivolous things. But I mean, if you're going to have all this money, you might as well be giving it away. If you're not going to use it, like use it for,
or, spend it on experiences and memories and things like that. We like to travel. We like to, go places. On a previous episode, we talked about, creating an experience with our children for our son's birthday, things like that. Those are things that, again, if you have, this box checked, tithing, investing, all of these, different things, paying the bills, and you have this money left over that's in your budget to spend this month, spend it. As long as it's a plan and part of your overall goals, live within your means. That's kind of the simplest way I can put it. And I'm kind of just probably gonna skip over a few of these and start wrapping it up. But I've always been very goal-oriented and have plugged numbers into my spreadsheet. As we've talked about before, I'm a spreadsheet guy, right?
Yes, you
are. And I've literally, since I was 22 years old, by the grace of God, I've been putting money away every month, and I plugged in a lot of numbers. And so I can speak from experience that you're never, ever going to be satisfied with a number. So don't be distracted or misled by, all right, I just have to get to this number and then I'll create experiences with my family, or then I'll start, making memories with my family, or then I'll be a better husband, or then I'll be a better dad, or then. I can speak from experience. Once you reach a number, you will just create a new number and a new number and a new number, and that it will be a moving target. So again, don't let that be defeating. Let it be motivating that along the way, have your numbers, make sure you have goals. And a lot of times, numbers speak to me, so like that it's usually tied to a number. But just know that that's not going to be the end all be all. It's just a step in the journey. And, if you, I guess the punchline here with the numbers is don't wait to become the person that you want to be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Just be the person today that you know the Lord wants you to be, or the person that you want to be in the future. Just be that person today at maybe a lesser value or a lesser step, and keep building towards being that bigger person, if you will.
Well, how does that saying always go? Money makes you more of who you already are.
Yeah, so that's actually the punchline
Oh, hey.
here. Yeah. So I you will hear me say a lot, more money just makes you more of what you already are. And I think more time also. You could apply it to a lot of different things. More time just makes you more of what you already are. But if you're not if you're not being a wise steward of your time today, you probably won't be a better wise steward of your time in the future. If you're not a wise steward with your money today, you won't be in the future. A lot of people I hear or talk to or whatever, it's like, well, we just don't have the extra finances right now, so we don't give to our church, or we don't tithe, or we don't, give to other, charities, any nonprofits, things like that. Well, it's like, I get it, but I don't. I think people are kind of lying to themselves, where if you can't manage your money and live within your means to be able to do those things today, then again, you aren't going to be just extra generous in the future. Now, if you're already generous today, you probably will be extra generous in the future. But believe me when I say, more money just makes you more of what you already are. So work on being that person today, so that when you do get more money, or maybe more time, in theory, retirement, you get more time, all those different things. This can apply to a lot of different areas in our lives, but specifically family finances, help have that mindset be impactful for you today, because again, we can get lost in the minutia of everyday life, and it can become overwhelming, it can become defeating, it can become all these different things. Well, maybe if you think about it from a different lens, it can become motivating and energizing. So one last thing that I want to encourage you with is, if you are struggling and if you are feeling defeated, look at that as the education. So every trial, every struggle that you're going through, something I always say is like, you're no failure, you're not dead yet. And it can kind of sound a little bit morbid or whatever, but it's like, it's true. If you have breath, if you have life, unless you are just literally failing over and over and not learning from it and quitting, that's the only time you actually kind of have true failure. If you quote unquote fail at something, but then learn from it and make a better decision in the future, then that quote unquote failure is just a lesson. It's the education. So I try to be encouraged if you are trying things and you're struggling, you feel like you can't get any traction in, especially the financial area of your life. Just think of the education you're getting. You mentioned some real estate investing earlier. And honestly, the way, by the grace of God, we didn't ever lose on a deal. But the way I looked at it is, okay, let me bookend this. Here's what the top end I think could be, but here's maybe if everything goes sideways, we might lose our down payment on this or whatever. And it's like, whether that's 5,000, 10,000, 80,000, whatever that is, identify that and think, you know what, if everything goes totally sideways and totally south, the worst case scenario is I just got a $10,000 education, right? Like college costs way more than that, so you're learning along the way. And, what you're dealing with right now, millions of people have dealt with before or are probably currently going through. And so you're not alone. If you're thinking about this stuff and working on it, you're already on the right track. So so keep up the good work. Hopefully a couple of these things were, some meat that you can chew on, some application that you can apply to your life and your marriage. And if nothing else, is just fodder to, just digest and implement in your marriage.
Yeah.
So.
And I just wanted to say too, as your wife, you are a really good example of how you can still be a godly Christian man, a really good husband, a really good father, and still be financially savvy,
I
right?
appreciate that,
Because
yeah.
I think sometimes like within Christian circles, money becomes very taboo, and it's really the love of money.
Yeah.
And just because this is something where God has given you a little bit of a mindset where numbers just make sense to you, and this is just something that you enjoy and a way that you have chosen to lead our family, it has never made you become consumed with
Yeah, I
it.
appreciate
And
that,
it's
yeah.
something where you still put God above all things. You put your family above that. If for some reason, like your job was gone today, it boils down to
Yeah.
that trust of God. You
Yes.
know, I mean, we
Yep.
talked about trust at the beginning of this.
Yep,
It
that would be part of
does-
my education.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, money does not have to be a bad thing within
Yeah.
Christian circles.
No,
It can,
I think it's a great thing. It's
It
a
is.
tool. It's a tool in your tool chest,
Yep.
and it also creates options, opportunities, all those things.
and it's
Yeah.
something that needs to be talked about. And like you said, within marriages, it is so important to be on the same page and to be discussing these things, having a common goal and working towards that common goal.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You can be on the receiving end of blessings for maybe some other people that have had some financial success, and then you can also be the giver, the person who blesses other people.
Exactly.
If God chooses to bless you with or bless you financially. So
Yeah.
it's just again, it's something that isn't the most important, but it sure is up there, and I think something that should be intentional and worked on. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, until next time, we want to encourage you to seek God, love your spouse, hug your kids, and stay devoted. Thank you for tuning in to this Devoted Life podcast with James and Shanda. We appreciate your support in sharing biblical, uplifting truths with the world. If you found value in this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us to improve the show, and we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how to live a life devoted to God and family, head over to thisdevotedlife.com. You can also follow me, Shanda, on Instagram at devoted_motherhood. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time on This Devoted Life podcast.